geodes. Geodes always attract a lot of attention from everyone, and it's totally understandable. But today we are going to talk about thunder eggs. This one here does have a little a bit of a cavity on it. Um, a lot of this information you can get if you subscribe to Rock and Jim, and they have emails they'll send out to you for free. And I always subscribe to the magazine. Recommend you to as well. They're not sponsors of the show, but if you're a real rock hound, you're going to have a few things. One of them is a geologist hammer, a 5-gallon bucket, and you're definitely going to be subscribing to Rock and Jim, and you're going to be listening to Radical Rocks. At least that's my humble opinion, that you would include that in your rock hounding when you're having downtime or whatever, doing exploration and learning more about it and getting some tips and stuff like that. So aside from liking and subscribing and sharing, we appreciate you doing that. Helps me grow the channel. You're doing me a favor. That's the way you kind of tip me for my time and the research that I do. Sometimes I do quite a bit of research. We just got back from a long trip and video series, 4-part series on the geology of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where we had a geologist and paleontologist named Chris go over the minerals and the silver mines and things like that in the area. It was very detailed, a lot of history there that a lot of people don't know about. So some valuable stuff. And you can go back and look at our videos on how to cut geodes. I've got a couple different videos on that. So anyway, let's get into it. What is a thunder egg? Well, again, this picture here is kind of showing what I would consider to be a geode because it has a hollow area inside. On the outside, they don't look like much. Now, I'm not going to be quoting this article verbatim, but we're going to pick some of the highlights. We'll give credit to the author at the end. This is, again, Rock and Jim magazine, online information they send out for free. So how are they formed? Well, you know, when the Earth was undergoing all kinds of volcanic activity and upheaval, as you go through deserts in the western United States, it goes all the way. There's geodes in Oregon, Washington, all over. Almost every any state that has volcanic activity will sometimes have geodes that are there, or at least a form of geodes and thunder eggs. Not all of them are filled with agate, of course, but the rhyolite was flowing and would layer. And in these layers, sometimes it would agatize, sometimes there could be calcites, quartz, different minerals that are going to form, jaspers, different colors based on the minerals that are there. Very beautiful. Each specialized, each geode that you cut, even from the same area, is going to be, or thunder egg that is going to be like a snowflake. No two will be exactly alike. You may find some similar if you're very lucky. They'll have similar colorization. Patterns are completely different. Now, when these voids form in this rhyolite, what happens is it is filled. It's filled with minerals such as agate, chalcedony, opal, and jasper. And there's other minerals that you'll find sometimes too inside of these. Some of them can even be fluorescent. Whoops, sorry about that. Some of them can even be fluorescent, and other crystals can form if there is a cavity. Of course, in that case, the better terminology would be a geode. Now, those crystals can form in different shapes. They can be druses, they can be crystals, they can be glittery, they can be milky, or they might not be any at all. Sometimes you'll find a thunder egg that has crystallization in it, but it's completely filled, and you can see these crystals are all locked in to each other. Now, where do you find these? Now, you can find them all over the world. I've done some pretty big in-depth videos on geodes, and I go over a lot of locations, so I would go back in the video history and look up everything that Radical Rocks has on geodes and thunder eggs. The thunder egg legend originally came from the Native Americans, where They felt that I've heard different stories. Some that these were from the phoenix, these were eggs of the phoenix. Others say that the thunderstorms and rumbling sound came from angry gods that threw rocks at each other. So some people believe that these things have healing powers, can help with addictions, and so on and so forth. Which that is kind of debatable. But if you believe in that kind of stuff, well, that's up to you. All right, Cold Mountain. This is another geode. Oh, forgot to give credit. Again, this article here, not very long. We're going to talk about how to dig them out, what that looks like. I've got some nice pictures here. If you're on the video, if you're in the podcast, obviously you won't be able to enjoy that. But this story was by Richard Gross and Pam Freeman on this short article on the Thunder eggs. So if you want the longer version, I would recommend you subscribe, get the full articles. They're much more in depth. They've kind of shortened their online articles quite a bit. This is a Cold Mountain Thunder egg. They are telling you how to cut it here. You can see it's beautiful. You've got this one here that looks like a broken heart, almost. It's a heart shape, and it has the white milky agate down the middle of this fracture in the middle of a heart, and beautiful molded browns and caramels, and some dark caramels, brown caramels, light caramels, reddish caramels, and some black as well in it. Looks very jasper type, and they say that these are found in Zacatecas, Mexico. It's spelled Zacatecas in the Sierra Mountains between in that area, the Cold Mountain Thunder eggs. Now, you think that they might be baseball size, but these ones are a little bit different. They're about golf ball to marble size. They're held together in big muddy clumps. Once you cut them open, that's when you see the beauty. Thunder eggs are ugly on the outside, and we'll look at some of those pictures. Now, here's another jasper type that is found in the same area of Cold Mountain, and they have a little part of their article here says Cold Mountain Thunder egg versus butterfly jasper, and they talk about this jasper. It's got some yellows, a little bit of almost a yellowish orange, more yellow than orange, with brown hues, a little bit of reddish at the bottom, and then this milky color right through the middle, making it a really neat heart-shaped cabochon here that's polished. Really neat, pretty stuff. They talk about how to cut it, and they tell you to, again, that no two are the same. You'll need to clamp this no particular way, and awkward shapes and things like that could make it difficult. So I've done videos where I show you how to do different things to deal with these rough shapes. Sometimes you can just wedge it between some wood, put it in your vise, and then slice it and cut it. Other times you may need to grind it flat in one area, grind off a piece, actually give it something to clamp onto. If worse comes to worse, you can make a small cut by hand and flatten one side, and then glue it with Elmer's glue or a wood glue, good wood glue, glue it to a block. Let it dry for days and days, and then you can actually put the block on there if you've got a nice stable saw and cut that off. I've got a whole video on how to do that as well. So, testing for fractures. Fractures are going to be your enemy. I read this article, and I don't agree 100% with everything on it as far as fractures being so hard to deal with. They are, but they aren't. There's always a way around it. But the material a lot of times has some rhyolite in it. The rhyolite may or may not take a polish. It's usually a reddish color, can be greenish, can be all sorts of colors in between. If the rhyolite is jasper, is agatized, it has some silica in it that makes it a little bit harder, that is more microscopic in construction, the rhyolite can take a halfway decent polish. It doesn't always polish as good and easy as the agate and the jaspers that are in there. It may take a little bit more heat, and we'll talk about that. Some of that rhyolite can be pretty soft, like 5 on the hardness scale. And he suggests here using a 80 grit to start the dome. And another article they talk about using a worn 80 grit. Personally, I would not use that. He suggests here smoothing the dome and removing as many as the scratches with a 220 grit wheel as possible. I am inclined to agree with that as well. If you have especially hard material, then yes, you can use a 100 grit wheel, a diamond wheel, and such. If it is softer and splintery or prone to fractures, like when you have these different minerals that are touching each other, like when this picture right here, you see the red, which could be a rhyolite influence, and then the agate, which is more of a quartz, more of a chalcedony, silica, and then on up into the jasper. That rhyolite to the quartz could fracture and pop off. So you really got to be kind of careful and take your time if you're not sure of the material you're working with. And then just go down gradually from 400 to 600. And if you've got better than a 600 grit wheel, great. Go all the way to 14,000 or 50,000. You're going to have a mirror polish. If you don't, then you can use polishing compounds. This is the part of the article that I don't really agree with 100%, but there is some truth to this. He says here, the writer, Russ Kaniuth, it's Kaniuth, he says that skip polishing compounds when fissures are present. And a fissure is just a crack or a cavity or a vug where there's an opening, kind of like in a geode. I would say, and I have videos on this too, you can use salicylic acid. Now, it's not as bad as it sounds. If you get it on your skin, it won't kill you. It will burn. You'll want to wash it off. You'll want to use gloves. You'll want to wear glasses, protective goggles. Excuse me. You'll want to have some fresh water around to clean it off your body if you get it. But you soak that stuff in this and get a brush, wear your rubber gloves, and clean it out. You can get not only the polishing compound, but other minerals that have been deposited over the crystals and can dull them and make them look dirty or dusty or brownish or grayish or dirty, or the grit and the material or the buffing material, the polishing material. It'll get all that out, and it'll make your crystals, if it has crystals, it'll make them sparkle. If it has druzy, it'll make it pop. So this is the best way that you can get a polish as far as I am concerned. Here is your traditional Thunder Egg right here. We find these in California, in Oregon, all over. They are solid. The rhyolite reddish outside. This one has a cloudy look. It almost has some layering. If you look in the middle, that is called layering. Like I said, I go into great detail on the geode video on the different types of agates and the way that they form. It is real nerdy if you want to get in there and find out why your agate has clouds or layering or different things that you may not be so aware of. I've gone into great detail. Now, when you're polishing this, it's got to be wet, or you have to have total good respirators because it is silica. Silica dust in the air causes salicylic poisoning. It can kill you, make you very sick. You can die. So take this serious. It's safe. If you want to be safe, you can be safe. If you're going to do dry sanding, be sure and be able to blow the air away from you and outside to a safe area while wearing a respirator. A dust mask alone is not going to give you 100% protection. It will give you very little protection. So you have to be very careful if you are going to dry sand. I would tell you that to get that rhyolite on this particular stone to polish, to get a little bit of a shine to it, you are going to have to get it hot. You're going to have to get it hot, and you can fracture if you get it too hot. You can get little chips and spalding. So it is an art to get the rhyolite to polish on some of these geodes, but it can be done. So be safe. High sander. These can be homemade. There's videos on the web how to do it, or you can buy a professional one. Or if your lapidary grinding machine has a piece on the end where you can do a sanding, flat sanding surface, there you go. You've got it made, and you can actually do the whole process with these if you don't have big saw cuts. If you do have big saw cuts, you're going to need a lapping wheel. Sandpaper will take you a long time. You're going to go through a lot of sandpaper to get a geode completely flat. It can be done, but you are going to have to use water to preserve your sandpaper so that it doesn't wear out, and you will have to get rid of any of the saw cuts that are in there. So if you see a little groove from your saw in that, going to be kind of a C shape on your cut geode where you cut it in half, you're going to have to remove all the material but that little scratch until you get down to the bottom of that scratch. So it can be very time consuming. Make sure it doesn't overheat. Again, they remind us here to be careful of that. You know, opal and obsidian, things like that, will crack very, very easily, very hot. Agate can take a little bit more heat, but still, you want to be careful, especially if it's getting hot and you're cooling it. If it gets real hot and you decide to dip it in water, you could cause a fracture. So don't do that. Either use water or sand a little and then set the piece down. If you're going to dry sand with a respirator and air blowing it outside away from people, yeah, you can do it that way, but go very slow. And again, once you get down to the 600 grit, you can use polishing compound. I prefer tin oxide, but you can use other polishing compounds as well. But like a iron oxide is going to be a lot harder to clean out of the vugs if you do have a geode. So wash them up. They tell you here you can polish with a piece of cerium oxide on a 12-inch diameter slow turning polish wheel covered with a low nap office carpet. This step will take about 15 minutes. I find that leather works best on my polishing wheels, so I use a little felt behind it, or sometimes the wheel will have a little spongy on it, and then I drape leather over it. I tie it off with wire, and that's what I use, but you use accordingly to what you want. This article is by Bob Rush. Now this thunder egg here is a beautiful one. Look at this beauty. Wow, it's gorgeous. This one is really something different. It's called the Fallen Tree Thunder Eggs from Oregon. There's some beautiful thunder eggs all over the Midwest United States. In fact, all over the world. There's Turkish agates and thunder eggs that are quite beautiful. Ones all over the world. It says here that sometime in about the mid-1960s in the Ochoco Mountains near Prineville, Oregon, Leonard Kopp, owner of Lucky Strike and Valley View Mine, stumbled across a wind-blown fallen tree with large roots exposed. Within the roots, he discovered a few thunder eggs, which led him to explore the area and make a claim. And here is some of the rocks and minerals. That is really pretty, guys. Look at that. Wow. That is gorgeous, isn't it? All right, little swig of coffee here. Okay, so the quantities here, I don't think there's a ton of it. It is made of chalcedony. They talk about different types. There might be some blue opal quartz and other inclusions. You never know what you're going to get when you cut one in half. Could look like a shell, a mushroom, rhyolite patterns, all sorts of things. Yeah, they're beautiful. They have some are more beautiful than others. You can see the pictures there of these. I got down here. If you want to purchase it, you might find some on eBay. I don't know. You can try. There's not a ton, but you know, you don't know what you get because it's going to be rough, right? So yeah, try to buy from a reputable source. And cabbing it is about routine. Some of the pitfalls to watch for is what we already talked about. For example, you look at this heart right here. You've got this chalcedony material here, and you have this other material here. That could be brittle right there and chip off. This little edge right here, that could be brittle and chip off because of the difference in materials. They look like they're solid, but sometimes they can break off. If there is a lot of little inclusions and fractures, you can use stabilization treatment, which I have done videos on stabilization. I've done one on vacuum stabilization, and I've done one on just doing it with a regular oven or heat source. So there are ways to harden it and ensure that that beautiful piece hopefully will be more likely to stay together and less likely to break. The polishing, the Process is about the same. Start with your grittier materials, which would be like 100 grit, and then work your way down to 600 or 14,000 if you have the real fine ones, as fine as you can. Russ Kennenuth is also the one who was able to do this article right here. Now, I want to show you what it looks like to dig up a pocket of thunder eggs. So you can see some of these pictures here. It just looks like a dirt clod. It doesn't look like much. Here's a guy down here pulling one out. You've got a little child here with a geologist hammer. And then, wow, here it is. Okay, so within this bed of potash and what looks like gravel is going to be layers of rhyolite. They can be sheets. It can be broken. There can be all kinds of potash, and then you see these round globules here, which are actually some of the thunder eggs or geodes. These can be as small as a little dinky marble or ball bearing. I've seen them as big as footballs. I guess in some areas they're even bigger. A great area to go digging for geodes in California is in the Mojave Desert, close to the Arizona state line, close to the Wiley Wells campground in Coon Hollow, and it is called the Hauser Beds. Within the Hauser Beds is the Potato Patch, many other areas where you can go with the rock hounding club. I would recommend going with the OBMS, Orange Belt Mineralogical Society, out of San Bernardino, California. You could go with the Yucaipa Gem and Mineral Club. They're in Yucaipa, which is in Southern California. The Anaheim Searchers is another great rock hounding group you could join, and others that have trips. Usually in Thanksgiving is a great time to go out to Wiley Wells, because in the desert it's super hot, and in the summer it's unbearable, and even in the winter you can have 90 to 100 degree days out there. Now when you go out there, if you go on one of these trips, they're going to go to different beds. They'll go to the Strawberry Patch, the Potato Patch, the cinnamon beds, all these different beds that you can go to and get different geodes. Some of them are green inside, there's red, there's chocolate crystals, there's just a huge variety of gem quality geodes out there to be had. More common ones, like some of the ones we looked at earlier. So now, if you are on the podcast, you're probably going to want to say goodbye, because we're just going to look at some geodes here, but I will talk about them as much as I can. So maybe you want to stay tuned and listen. But we've got a whole array of thunder eggs right here. And there's a little bit of information on some of these, but look at the variety of that one. Red, white, blue inside. This is a patriotic rock. I would say this probably maybe out of Oregon, not 100% sure, with greens, real pretty. Here's another beautiful one that looks like an iceberg. Beautiful crystals formed inside with the rhyolite shell on the outside. Here's a thunder egg that has like a bullseye on it. Very interesting. Sometimes the shapes that you get can be very interesting inside. It could look like a fish. It could look like a face. If you look at this one down here, you've got a face on this. Look at this. See that face? It looks like a maybe a raccoon or something like that, kind of a face. Here's one that has a face on it. Isn't that interesting? Got eyeballs and a big old giant gaping mouth. I cut one open once that looked like a husky, and I gave it to a friend of mine. His name was Noel. He loved husky dogs. They were his babies. And I cut this thunder egg open, and inside was a pattern, a dark brown, like what you see in these ones here, where there's 2, 4, 6, 7 of them in the shot there. It was kind of like the darker ones, but it was shaped just like a husky. Had white colored ears in the hole and everything. It was amazing. And both sides looked like a husky. So I gave him both sides. Even though I wanted to keep one, I just felt like those belonged to him. He had to have them. And I found one. I've got one right now that kind of looks like a deer. I got another one that looks kind of like a seal. So you just never know what you'll find. Here's what they look like. They're very ugly in the rough until you cut them open. and see how beautiful they are inside. Sometimes it just is stunning. This one here has what looks like moss. So you've actually got a moss agate in there. Very rare, very spectacular, very beautiful. Man, that would make my day to cut something open and see that inside. Look at this one. Here's another crazy one here. Look at that thunder egg right there. I don't even know if that's legitimate or what. Some of these I can tell are. This one looks pretty legitimate here. This is almost a pseudomorph right here. That looks like very much a pseudomorph to me. Love to hear your comments if you're an expert on pseudomorphs. That kind of looks like one to me. Just beautiful colors on these things. There's some blood red. I don't know where you would find that. That's pretty cool. I love condor agates. These are very common right here. You find these in Oregon. You can find them in Wiley Wells. You can find them Newberry nodules look a lot like that. A lot of geobeds look like that. This one has a layering that you see. Pretty cool. The liquid filled slowly while it was layered. Sometimes you'll see them layered one way and then layered another way. That's when the actually, here's one right here. They call it tilted layering. So you've got layering here. You got a little layering going that way. Something happened where it was disrupted. The earth was moving, so it caused the layering while it was layering to actually layer with some layers at 1 degree angle and other layers at another degree angle. You'll see banding. That's where it just layers as a band as it fills. And when you look at these in a microscope, you can always see there's a little line where the fill was happening. It just came in and filled and magically made these patterns. Look at this one, looks like a butterfly. One looks like a butterfly, and the other one looks like a cat. Doesn't that look like a cat, kind of? I mean, yeah, you got to use a little imagination sometimes. Sometimes it's just plain to everybody. Look at this beautiful agate. I used to know where those come from. I don't know if that's Wyoming agate has that pattern. I forget. Yeah, Wyoming agate has this pattern and shape. The oranges and stuff, real pretty. So just a whole slew of thunder eggs, which typically I would call that a geode, and I would call these solid ones thunder eggs. So I think we will conclude right here. Like I said, there is a very, very thorough all about geodes that I have a video on, and I really go into in-depth on how these are formed. If you want to check that out, I spent a lot of time and research in that for you so you could get all that information in one place. So again, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to ask you to please support my channel and like and subscribe. You'd be doing me a big favor. I really appreciate that. It's almost like you're giving me a tip for taking my time out of my day to get this material together for you, and I really appreciate it. So until next time, remember, rockhounds don't die, we petrify, and we are out.